Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Konich-Yeehaw here on the Last Choice Network. I am Natalie, and today I am joined by Jared. What's up, Jared?
Not much. Thank you for having me yet again.
Yep, and today on the podcast, we wanted to talk about something that it's not anime necessarily, but it's anime related, it's anime culture related. We wanted to talk about what an otaku is and like what is an otaku versus a weeb and things like that, which is are terms that are really big in anime fan culture. So, I guess to start off, I wanted to just give the two really brief, simple definitions of the two terms for anybody who doesn't know. So, an otaku is generally defined as a person who is obsessed with tech or particular aspects of pop culture. And usually part of that is like it's to the detriment of their social skills. So it's the idea of like the really socially awkward nerd, right? And then a weeb or a weeaboo is a non-Japanese person who is obsessed with Japanese culture. You could see that also as maybe a detriment to their social skills, but we can get more into that later. So yeah, Jared, um, I guess do you identify as either one of these terms?
You know, I used to. So like in high school, I was like 100% a weeb, like doing anime, I mean not anime, like Naruto hand signs and like pretending I know all this shit about Japan and things like that. And then when I got into college, I went full otaku. For anime because I was watching like everything when it came out. I'm just like a huge database of anime knowledge. But now I'm not really either. Like I don't watch all that many currently airing anime, and I don't pretend like I know all this stuff about Japan and things like that. So I don't really identify as either anymore. What about you?
For me, I definitely never identified as an otaku. Um, because I never really experienced that level of, I guess, consumption. But and then like with weeb, I don't know, because I definitely never thought that I was somebody who was necessarily like obsessed or trying to imitate um Japanese culture. But I think if somebody like if I went to a convention and somebody was like, "Yeah, like you're weeb or whatever," I'd be like, "Yeah, sure." I
Right.
don't really have a I don't have a particular I guess like need to uh, identify as either one of these, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think something that's like really important that between the two, between otaku and weeb, is that otaku isn't necessarily like a derogatory term. Like it can be used in a somewhat positive light. Like if someone is an otaku, that means that they know a lot about a certain subject. While weeaboo is like explicitly a derogatory term. So like identifying identifying as a weeb is kind of something that's more put on you, I think, while identifying as like an otaku isn't necessarily like the worst thing in the world. Now, are they
Mhm.
still like pretty looked down on, like especially like otakus? Yeah. But
Yeah. Oh, and I was gonna say that, maybe, like, kinda jumping into, the next whatever little segment is talking, like, a little bit about, like, the history of otaku,
right.
right? Because it has a very, kind of negative origin,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, the origin of, like, otaku and this, um, whatever, like, the otaku panic or whatever, um, is, whenever, um well, oh gosh, how do I say this? So,
So
basically
the term otaku became popularized during a string of murders in the 80s. So,
Right, yes, in 1989, there is, sorry, I have my notes here. Tsutomu Miyazaki was arrested for kidnapping and killing 4 young girls, and he was, like, dubbed the Otaku murderer. So, I guess what I was trying to say is that from before that, in the '70s, we see a rise in, um, Lolita content, is what I actually wanted to start with.
oh,
And it's this, idea of, like, older men become obsessed with young girls, right? So it's pedophilia. Um, and it's, like, from there that we get this idea of, like, these older men being obsessed with young girls, and they're, like, and the content that's coming out around that, right? Because this is all from, like, doujinshi comics, right? Like, they're all fan made, and they're all pretty, like, sexual in nature, but they have like, the content is with younger characters, but who's consuming it is an older audience.
okay, interesting.
So yeah, the from there, like, I mean, the otaku gets a bad like, it's already, like, a very negative start, right? They're really antisocial, they're, seen as, like, sexually repressed, and, yeah, I mean, basically, whenever they went to arrest this guy, right, the otaku murderer, there's really famous pictures of the inside of his house, and it's cluttered. It's, like you get this like idea of what like someone who is like a total social outcast, right? Like it creates this idea of like the social outcast that is also into like this, um, like not explicitly anime content, but
Right.
um, like fiction, I guess I should say,
Yeah,
into
cause
this fiction. Yeah.
yeah, cause I mean, you can really be an otaku for anything. I know, like, one of the most like, some of the most popular, like, I guess, popular, like, otaku niches are anime, idols, and military.
Yes, like
And
the, mecha, like the like
right,
hyper military, I think is a
right,
better way
but,
to
I
say it,
mean,
yeah.
meaning, like, there are people that, like well, I mean, not even that. I mean, these are people that are, like, obsessed with, like, World War II, World War One,
Mm,
like,
mhm.
knowing
Yeah, you're
all of
right.
the different guns and all of the different tanks and things like that.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
like you were saying, it doesn't necessarily have to be anime or anything, like, cutesy. It's just
mhm.
something that it's a whatever is fits their form of escapism.
Yes, exactly. Um, so then, like, traveling from there, we get, like, well, you mentioned it before about how whenever you went through your "otaku phase," quotes, um, that you would just focus on consuming, right? Like, you were
Right.
just focusing on, like, you had to see all of the anime, I don't know.
Right.
But, yeah, so, another way like, that was, like, an old way of viewing otaku, right? And in some ways, like, that's still I'm not gonna say that that's not accurate anymore, but that's, like, a very, like, original way to view what an otaku was.
Mhm.
Kind of a newer view of it is seeing it as, what we learned about in our class, like the database animal, right? The person who just consumes for the love of consuming. Um, and I think what was important about like that aspect is that, or of the database animal, is that you're not necessarily trying to consume for a grand narrative, but you just want to consume everything, you know?
Right.
Like, and that falls into like what you were saying. Whenever you can consume anything. It doesn't have to be anime related, like you were
Yeah.
saying.
It's
Uh,
it's more so
yeah.
from personal experience, it's more about it's less about actually enjoying it and
Mhm.
more about being in the know. So
Mhm.
you so for like how I was is that I felt like if I didn't watch all of these shows, then I would miss out in like conversations with my peers. But since in reality a couple people only watch a couple shows, if I wanted to be able to talk to everyone, I had to watch everything.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's also, like, a very social way of looking at it too,
Right,
or a very social way of looking at otaku, which goes against the, like, original idea of them being, like, very awkward.
right,
Um, yeah. So, I guess then in looking at otaku, um, once again, we are trying to, like, stress that it is not necessarily an anime related thing, but it is definitely brought up in animes, right? In shows and movies and such like that. And one of the like first ones, biggest ones to kind of tackle what an otaku is would be Satoshi Kon with his movie Perfect Blue.
right.
So in the movie Perfect Blue, it is about an otaku, like someone who fits all of the otaku stereotypes of being antisocial, of being sexually repressed, of coming off as like a creepy murderer stalker,
Having
like just the really
having the cluttered room.
yes, having the cluttered room. And another part of that was like being easily manipulated, like not having a very strong um will of their own, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um, and so we have like this very, like I said, stereotypical otaku whose fascination is of Mima, who is the main character, and she is an idol turned actress. And basically, a lot of things go down. It is considered like horror esque, and in how he stalks her and how she um responds to that attention, and so on and so forth. So, did you have any comments to say about Perfect Blue?
oh, I mean,
Yeah.
I think Perfect Blue is the perfect example of an old way of thinking of otakus because, I mean, I don't remember. Do you happen to know when a Perfect Blue came out?
Let me look it up. Oh, wait, it came out in 1997, whenever I
Okay.
was born.
Okay. So so it was a little under 10 years after the Otaku
Mhm,
murderer, but it still just had that exact, like, almost one-to-one, um, mirror of the Otaku murderer, of
mhm,
being obsessed with these people and, having the cluttered room, things like that, and so it really shows, like, this is what the media portrays otakus as.
mhm,
And I think it's interesting, especially from like a retrospective um, idea or perspective, a
mhm.
retrospective perspective. And
Yeah, especially oh, go ahead,
I
sorry.
was gonna say, and I mean the image of otakus, especially in media, has changed so much since then.
Mhm. Yeah, I was gonna do a quick jump to, Satoshi Kon's other
Okay,
work,
yeah,
Paprika. Paprika, which also features 2 otakus, and even between those 2 movies, Perfect Blue and Paprika, you can see even how, maybe Satoshi Kon himself kinda saw a shift on what an otaku was and what an otaku could be, right?
right,
Because, in Paprika, there are 2, otaku-like characters, and one of them represents the old otaku, the one who is obsessed with his niche subject and doesn't know how to interact with people, he doesn't know how to, yeah, I mean, he's just really socially awkward, he's sexually repressed, he's, the very classic otaku. And then in this movie, we are also introduced to what could be considered like the new otaku. It's an otaku who knows his downfalls, but um, he's able to consume knowledge. He's an otaku who is more focused on technology, and in his consumption of trying to like learn all about this like new tech stuff, he's able to be productive.
and he's pretty sociable too, like, especially with the main characters. Like, he's still, like,
Yes, he is.
socially awkward, he's still pretty awkward, but, like, he has no problem talking with them.
No problem talking with them. They invite him out to lunch and stuff. Um, and what I was getting at is that he is a productive member of society, right? The whole um, plot of Paprika is that him and the other otaku are the creator of this like incredible new technology, right? So he is able to like prove himself,
Right.
like as I mean, as like messed up as it sound, but as like a needed member of society, not someone who is like a freeloader, like I think other otakus come off as.
Yeah.
So yeah, and um, and I guess getting into moving on from that, I had mentioned this to you a couple of days ago, but I had like a really like weird revelation because I was trying to think of some more like in real life examples of what a modern otaku could look like, and I thought of Mark Zuckerberg,
Yeah. Yeah.
who is who is known for being this like really awkward guy. Like
Right.
every picture, every interview you see of him, you're like, this guy isn't even real, you know? Like you look,
Yeah.
the whole joke about oh he's a lizard person, whatever, whatever. But you cannot deny that he has created something that's very much a foundation to something that's very just kind of it's in our everyday lives. It I would say it's probably, Facebook, modern social media, it was a turning point in a lot of people in technology and how we communicate with each other,
Yeah,
you
it
know?
was.
So, as much as you can say that he's awkward and everything, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
he created something that it we wouldn't be where we are today without it.
Yeah, because, I mean, so much social media like Twitter, um, took inspiration from Facebook.
Yes, exactly, especially in their beginnings, and now every social media just takes inspiration from each other.
Right.
Um,
I I
yeah,
wanted to bring up
and then I guess, go
I wanted to bring up modern, like, the modern image of otakus now.
right,
Um,
yeah,
I think it's really interesting because a lot of, like, anime, it shows, like, the main character, especially in isekai, it shows the main character as this, like, loser kind of otaku that's then
mhm,
born into this new world to be like have a power fantasy of being like the strongest sorcerer or anything like that, strongest
mhm,
swordsman,
mhm,
things like that. And it's like the otaku is now the hero of media.
right, and, what you're bringing up with is, like, isekais is that, like, in I mean, we talked a little bit how this is like Sword Art Online, like,
Yeah.
this is like the definition of, this is a gamer nerd, and he goes into his video game, and he's the hero,
Yeah, he's the
right?
strongest guy ever, does things that other characters can't even do.
Yeah, so it's also showing how it's, like, super positive because it's also showing how, like, "Hey, like, why don't you be an otaku and share" like,
Yeah, yeah.
this could be you with this power fantasy in
Right.
this fantastical world that you can create yourself or join or et cetera, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And it's just like kind of an interesting turn because it's like there really aren't I I wonder if it's because maybe the more average person would be more leaning towards an otaku now.
Mhm.
Like,
Well, especially now with the
right,
pandemic, like, I'll
especially with
just
the
go ahead and bring it
pandemic.
up. Especially with the pandemic, everybody's inside, everybody's maybe got a new hobby or something,
Exactly,
a
right?
new thing to focus on. I also wanted to bring up, like, this isn't just, like, in the isekai format,
Mhm.
right? Like, I think isekai is a very, like, it's a genre where it can be seen maybe like super obviously super like on the nose, right? Where like
Right.
you're in your regular world and then you go into the new world, right?
Right.
Like quote unquote the new world, whatever that may look like. And now you're the hero. But even with like but the anime that we're watching right now, My Dress Up Darling, I'm gonna bring it up. So like that is somebody who you could say is an otaku because he's into something that's very traditional. He's into making Hina dolls, right? And that's like his obsession. Is he wants to be like the best Hina doll painter that there is, and he doesn't know how to like bring up that hobby with other people, so it makes him socially awkward,
Right.
right? But then we but then he gets the cool girl, right? Like that's like the plot is that he gets the cool girl. And I think you can see that a lot. I mean, my sister and I always or at least she always makes fun of me where she's like, "Oh, is this another anime where it's like loser boy and cool girl?"
Yes.
And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, it's another anime where it's a loser boy and a cool girl. Like
Right. Yeah.
that's what it is." And that's like what the new
That's the new
like
format.
kind of yeah, it's a new format. And I think that is very like based on maybe this otaku fantasy also like a romance fantasy
Mhm.
kind of, right? Like even if you're the loser boy, you can get the cool girl,
Yep.
you know.
Let's
So,
see. You got um oh my gosh, I just lost it. Komi. Komi-san did that.
mhm,
Um you
mhm.
have
I
Don't
mean,
Mess
Horimiya
Horimiya.
Miyama did that.
Yeah, you have Horimiya, you have Don't Mess with Me, Takagi. You
Mhm,
have um basically there's all these shows that are doing the same thing, like within the same season.
mhm. Yes. They're all coming out, like, right next to each
Yeah.
other. Mhm, and then a little bit I wanted to add on top of that. I know we're, like, really only talking about otaku
Yeah.
here, so we'll touch on
We will
we'll touch on weeb for just
we
a
will
little bit
touch
in the
yeah.
closer. But the last thing I wanted to talk about with otaku, or maybe the last thing, is, girls and women
Mhm.
who identify as only think about men and boys. But, um, girls can be otakus too, whether that's a positive thing or a negative thing, leave it up to you. Um, but my one of I'm not gonna say the only example because there are a lot of examples of girls who are otakus as well, like in anime. But I think one of the to me most obvious examples is Princess Jellyfish, which is about a like household of girl otakus. They're roommates and they're all very quirky and socially awkward, but they have learned to live with each other. So that's like they are their own like little social bubble, right? And I don't know, I just think it's interesting I think how girl otakus and boy otakus are portrayed and how they differ. And because I do think that I don't know, I feel like girl otakus, it's easier to see them as just, like, cutesy.
Yeah. They rarely portray female otakus as, like,
Something negative.
overweight and, like, grimy and, like, know-it-alls and things like that.
Yeah, like, I'm not gonna say that they're more like Girl Next Door. I'm not gonna say that they're, like, hot or
Yeah.
anything, or but they're, like, they're
Yeah,
average.
they're no main villain of, Perfect Blue.
No, no. Um, and it's almost like their social awkwardness is endearing, like, it isn't as, like, embarrassing? I don't know
There
if that makes sense, like, it's
A lot of them are typically side characters in shows that it's this character is an otaku, but that's just kinda quirky.
mhm, yeah. The other example that I thought of, like, right away was in Ouran High School, the, the lady manager, right, that's what they call her, Renge, She is like the hosts all like identify her as an otaku, but sh sh she's not I don't wanna say that she's isn't socially awkward because she is, but she's so confident in herself
Mhm.
that she doesn't know that she's socially awkward.
Right.
Um, and that's, like, the humor in it, right? Is that you have this really confident otaku, and she's being so awkward, but she doesn't know
Mhm.
it.
Now
So,
we should
yeah.
talk about weebs.
Yes, so with weebs, I think that well, okay, just one last little bit. I swear it's related.
Okay.
So otaku used to be only used for Japanese people, and now I think it has become broader to use that term for anybody. A weeb is specifically someone who is not Japanese. So a Japanese person can't be a weeb. Just
Okay.
go ahead and throwing that out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there
Yeah.
are variants. There are different like variants of the word. Like, I've seen Japanese people obsessed with Western culture called them
Mhm.
Westaboos.
Yeah, or like or the people in the West who are obsessed with K-pop,
Yeah,
they're Koreaboos, right? So there are variations of the word, but we are talking about weeaboos, which is, like I said, a person who is obsessed with Japanese
right.
culture.
And they all kind of encapsulate the same idea of this is a person that enjoys this certain aspect of another society. For example, let's just use Japan or for weeaboos.
Mhm, mhm,
And then they get all of their knowledge from the media they consume. So they think that they know what Japan is all about. They know everything about Japan because they've watched anime. So they know
mhm.
that, every Japanese high school has this big elaborate school festival that has, food stands and things like that.
And maid
Right.
cafes and
And
haunted houses for some reason.
right.
Yeah.
And but I'd say that otaku and weebs are complete opposites of each other. While
Mhm.
otakus have a database, they've researched, they have this vast database of the thing that they enjoy. Weebs know very little, but think that they know a lot.
They have like this you could say it's simply like an entertainment, like a pop culture-ish kind of knowledge of an entire culture
Right.
though, is the
Yeah.
thing, right? So it's this idea that like what is produced in a country is directly related to like how life is actually like in that
Right.
country. And I know that like, I can't like um I think it's really just interesting how people can even think like that. Sorry.
No, no,
Like
it makes
because
sense.
I think yeah,
I mean, our
because
perfect example is that everybody thinks that people think that everyone in Texas wears cowboy hats and spurs and rides
yeah,
horses.
and we live out in the middle of nowhere and we
Right.
ride our horses to school. Yes, exactly. I even had like people ask me that whenever I was in the Philippines.
Mhm.
But it's yeah, but and whenever you say it like that, whenever you say it about like where you're from, or you think about those like stereotypes of where you're from, I think that's whenever you can really realize just how silly it sounds
Yeah.
to um to think that you know everything about the Yakuza by playing the Yakuza series.
Yeah.
We think that you know like things like that because that's really what it comes down to, right? Is you watch a movie, you watch an anime, you play a game, and you think that you get it.
The I Whenever I talk about like weebs to people, I go to one very specific example that perfectly encapsulates them. SNL had this skit called J-Pop America Fun Time Now. Watch
Mhm.
that, and that is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about weebs. It's,
Yes, that's a
they're
weeb.
what they have like these more J-pop hairstyles, but they're all white. One of them
Mhm.
is wearing a kimono and he's showing off his katana skills that like
Mhm.
he's only done like in his bedroom, and it's just over the top and And but growing up with weebs in high school, this is exactly how they acted.
That's what they were like,
Exactly.
yeah.
So it seems like such
Throwing in the random Japanese word
yeah,
to make it sound like they knew what like, they knew Japanese
yeah,
or
exactly.
yeah.
Um, wishing that they were Japanese or pretending to be
Mhm.
part Japanese. Um, adding
Yeah.
"san" or, like, some an honorific to the end of their
Yeah,
name.
the
Yeah,
honorifics.
things like that,
Mhm.
where there's again, to point, like, the contrast between the 2 of them, otakus have, like, this great respect for what they're into, while weebs really don't have respect for the culture because they don't do the time to actually research and know what
It's just
yeah,
entertainment.
it's just it's face value.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I think that that was a very fun and productive talk
Mhm.
about the otaku in weeb and how they relate to anime fan culture.
Right.
Um, I hope that, if anything, this was a little educational for whoever is listening to this. If you didn't know before, or if you had even just maybe not as deep as a understanding, because I know whenever I learned about all this stuff, I was like, wow, I didn't think about all those different facets of it.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, thank you so much for listening. That this is an episode of Konich-Yeehaw, the anime podcast here on the Last Choice Network. Once again, I am Natalie, and I was joined by Jared. Thank you for joining me.
Of course.
Yes, and I hope to catch y'all in the next episode. Yeehaw.